Hey folks, Tom from Real Guys Fishing. Went ahead and stopped the intro here. I've been told the intro is too long, and you know what? They're right. I have friends, family, followers that have been giving me some advice on what I'm doing here on the channel, and I'm going to go ahead and take that advice. So over the next few videos, you'll be seeing a few changes, one of which will be a shorter intro that I'll be doing. So go ahead, and if you like what I'm doing here, or even if you don't like what I'm doing, leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel. If you do like it, leave me a like, let me know, and I'll go ahead and I'll change things up, and we'll see if we can put out some content that matches what you like. So today's video is about something I've been thinking about for a while. Solunar tables. Are they complete BS? What role do conditions play when you're out fishing? So I wanted to go ahead and put together something looking into this. So if you're in my general age group, you probably remember in Field & Stream magazine the Solunar tables that were toward the back, giving you an idea of when the wildlife would be most active, when the fish would be biting, based on the sun and the moon and where they were positioned. I never really paid much attention to it, other than to use that as some fodder to try to convince my parents that I should go out fishing at certain times on certain days. But that was back then. Now, recently, started looking into it a little more. Really started with November 3rd of 2022. Russ, Melody, and I went up to Erie for a steelhead trip. We were fishing trout run, fishing in the lake, and as you can see in the video below, fish were all over the place. We were doing nothing though. We couldn't catch them. People were snagging a few, but in general, the fishing was horrible. We went all day, only a couple that I saw that were legally caught. People were snagging them, and they were so thick. I was running a spinner across, throwing it before dawn, and I was bouncing the spinner off their backs. I could feel it as I'm bringing them in. So it got me thinking, why were the fish not cooperating that day? So I thought back to these Solunar tables, and I went ahead and found this app. I'll try to put the link in the description. But as you see, according to this app, it was a horrible day for the activity. So it's got me thinking about other days where I had good or bad results, and how the charts would match up with those. So I searched my memory and the pictures on my phone and came up with some interesting correlations. Solar eclipse, May 30th, 1984. I rushed home from school and went out in the pouring rain just to fish during the solar eclipse. Ended up with a great day of bass fishing, including 2 bass that were both over 5 pounds. Striper fishing, Cape Cod, May 30th, 2003. My grandfather, my daughter, and I limited out early. Outer Banks, August 16th, 2003. Nothing was biting all day other than one black drum that I got at about 3 a.m. North Carolina coast, October 1st, 2014. Had a great run of Spanish mackerel and false albacore. Local trout stream, May 27th, 2016. Russ got 1 trout and I got somebody's goldfish they dumped in the stream, and that was all. But just 3 days later in the same stream we got this one and a couple other trout. Interesting thing was that they were only biting in areas where there was a little bit of a waterfall and some turbulence. Offshore Lake Erie for perch, September 26th, 2016. Only 5 fish caught on the headboat all day. North Carolina coast, September 30th, 2015. All the bluefish you could want. And eventually we also found schools of Spanish mackerel and limited out of them too. Erie, November 13th, 2014. Lake effect snows blew up and ran us out early, but we did have several hookups early before we had to get out of there. This is that storm that dumped 5 feet of snow on Buffalo. Erie, January 9th, 2016. The Solunar chart looks great, and we did get a couple, but the conditions were brutal. Water was low and clear, and we had ice floating down. March 9th, 2016. Another rough day for conditions. Managed a few, but the water was so low and clear, and it was nearing the end of the steelhead run, but we still did okay. And it's not just the fish. Here are a few great days by the charts that match up with deer in my yard while it's still daylight. And finally, Russ with his first of many hybrid striped bass we caught on the Ohio River that evening after dinner on August 12th, 2022. They started biting right as the major period started, about 7:15, 7:30. I remember that because we hadn't had much luck before that, and Russ wanted to head home, but I convinced him to stay a little bit longer, and it was like someone's flipped on a light switch. Which brings us to our 2 days in Erie recently. Both days were comparable for weather. Tuesday it got above freezing a little earlier in the day, but both days were about the same temp to start. Sun and wind were about the same, and water temperature hadn't changed. The difference being that Saturday's conditions were much more favorable for steelhead, with good current and stained water providing only about a foot of visibility. By Tuesday, there was no additional rain. The water had dropped a couple more inches, and it cleared to about 3 feet visibility and was moving much slower. I had intended to stay in the same spot the second day and provide a real like-to-like comparison, but after I caught this one male that you see in the bottom window, some guys decided to wade out right into my drift. There's always one, right? Well, in this case, there were 3 of them. Whatever. Worked out for the best. But before I left, that spot was shaping up pretty well. I saw at least half a dozen fish landed. I left and made a stop much further upstream. As you can see here, the water was clear. You can't see them, but there were several fish right under the corner of this ledge that I'm on. The 2 guys on the other side of the stream hooked up with several on minnows before I moved on. But since it was now approaching midday and I didn't feel like running up to the mile creeks, I just went to Walnut. I figured the stream would be packed and maybe I could get a spot on the wall. Well, it was the wall that was packed, and upstream barely had anybody. I decided to just bite the bullet and go up to the falls, and if it was packed, I'd work my way back down. Got up there and there was only one other guy there.
Okay, well, this is not a good sign. Middle of the day and nobody's up here at the falls, which tells me there's probably nothing going on here. But, oh wait, there's one guy. He's in full camera, no wonder I couldn't see him. So, we'll see what's going on here.
I tried egg sacks at first, but there was no interest. As you can see, the water is crystal clear, which is horrible for steelhead. But the great thing about this falls and others is that they put a lot of air into the water, which reduces visibility while increasing the flow. I switched up to a fly under a float, and first cast, right in that turbid water, I had one taken.
Well, that was relatively easy. Just needed the right bait.
Eventually, this one pops off as I'm about to land it, but the action didn't stop. For the next hour or so, the bites were constant enough to keep just about anyone happy.
Oh, that was a nice hit. Ooh, brown. I think that's a big brown. It looked like a brown, or it's a really colored up steelhead. I could be wrong. Either way, it's a nice fish. This is where if you have a net man, it makes your life a lot easier. No, that's a steelhead. Oh yeah, nice steelhead. Whew. Very nice steelhead. Okay. Woohoo. There we go. That was nice. Woo! There we go. And another, ooh, female. Nice. And she already busted somebody off. Okay, we're gonna go up here, maybe. Okay. Oh. Slow down. Okay, so there's mine. And somebody's sucker spawn. There we go. Nice.
Eventually my memory card filled up on the camera, but after that I still caught about 7 or so more. Oh. So what's better to have, good conditions or a good period of activity? Obviously both would be preferable. As you saw in the example earlier, you could have conditions be perfect like that day at Trout Run where they were just so thick you could walk on them, but if they're not feeding, there's not much you can do. And if the activity looks good, you may still have to hunt down someplace with better conditions in order to get a bite.
Ooh. That's a good catch. I was afraid I snagged her. Oh!
I certainly will be looking more at the Solunar activity charts before I go so I can set my expectations accordingly. But in the end, it's really about just getting out there and fishing for the experience.